This is the Project Management Podcast. We bring project management topics to beginners and experts. Find us on the web at www.thepmpodcast.com or send your emails to pmpodcast@gmail.com.
Hello and welcome to episode number 130. I am Cornelius Fichtner. This is the Project Management Podcast for the 16th of October 2009. Nice to have you with us. I attended the Gartner Project Portfolio Management and IT Governance Summit in Orlando, Florida last month. During this time, I got a chance to speak with Gartner's Audrey Apfel and learn more about specific findings and recommendations that Gartner has for its clients. Unfortunately, I was 25 minutes late for our 30-minute meeting. That didn't go down all too well, but it gave Audrey a few moments to have a nice cup of tea that morning. However, Audrey was also kind enough to then get with me over the phone later on so that we could still discuss the summit and what she sees as surprising research findings that were presented during the summit. We also learn about her personal thoughts on important PMO strategies, the ones that organizations should keep in mind, and we also look at recommendations in regards to project portfolio management and governance that companies with an existing structure and those who are just starting to build their own structure must know about. She has some excellent advice for all of us. And of course, you can always find more information on Gartner.com. Also, the tentative dates for the 2010 PPM and IT summits are May 2010 in London in the UK, and in June 2010 it should be again in Orlando, Florida. Before we get to the interview, however, let me remind you just one more time of that small favor I've been asking for in the past few shows. Please tell just one person today how much you enjoy the Project Management Podcast. Thank you. And now to our interview. Audrey Apfel is a Managing Vice President and Gartner Fellow. She is heading up Gartner's Program and Portfolio Management Research team. This is her second time as an active member of Gartner Research. After several years as an analyst in networking, hosting, and service providers, and then being selected as a Gartner Fellow during that time, Audrey was recruited for several business management positions within Gartner. These included business operations, PMO, and product development. She returned to Gartner Research to launch and lead the Gartner for IT Leaders offering in program and portfolio management. That was in 2006. And now, enjoy the interview.
The Project Management Podcasts feature interview.
Today with Audrey Apfel, Managing Vice President, Business of IT Research Division at Gartner.
Hello, Audrey, and welcome to the program.
Thank you, Cornelius.
Well, about 2 weeks ago, I was in Florida and I attended the inaugural Gartner PPM and IT Governance Summit. I understand this is going to be a recurring event in the future. What is the goal of this governance summit?
Well, our main goal is to, in fact, provide a community experience to our, what we call our PPM leader research clients. So in fact, it's all based around the Gartner research and providing sort of a live community experience. Of course, the summit is open to all, and we're looking for the people particularly who are trying to mature and advance how their organizations do aspects of PPM and IT governance.
You had 450 guests thereabout, and if I understood correctly, you were initially hoping for about 300. So it looks like an incredible success.
Oh, yes. Actually, we're extremely happy with the turnout, especially this year when so many organizations have travel restrictions in place and limit what their folks can go to. So it was a great turnout, but in some ways it really did match what we're seeing in organizations, which is increased focus and, in fact, increased investment in these very disciplines.
Interesting. Well, let's jump right into what you're seeing here. So for you personally, were there any surprising findings, interesting trends maybe that Gartner analysts did find about PPM and IT governance and then presented at this summit?
Well, I think one of the things that we presented quite heavily in a number of our discussions is, in fact, that there's a bit of an inflection point going on with how organizations do all aspects of what I might call project-based work. That, in fact, change is a given, flexibility is necessary. You know, this has been a year of survival tactics and not grand strategies. And one of the surprising findings was how uncomfortable, frankly, a portion of the population is with those very concepts.
Mm-hmm. And why do you think that is, that they are uncomfortable?
Well, I think what we're looking at is there's been a certain success path for people who have come up through project management disciplines, and it's very structured, and it's very analytical, and it's very detailed, and that's all well and good. There's also been a path for a lot of IT professionals that's been very technical and structured and detailed and analytical. And what we find going forward, and particularly there was just a crescendo this year of, you know what, the recipe's not working. We've got to look around, we've got to move fast, we've got to use an overused phrase, we've got to be agile, but there's some ability to incorporate change and react. And it's very much different than the way a lot of us have been wired to succeed, in fact. Mm-hmm. And that's the change we are hoping to take our clients through.
Yeah. One of the pieces of paper that was in my package when I arrived at the governance summit were the Gartner speakers. So this is a page where everybody is listed and what it is they're doing. And you're actually number one here. You're the first one. And in your little bio that they give us here, they say that your focus is on PMO strategies, portfolio optimization. So tell me, what are your personal thoughts then on what are the important strategies, the important PMO strategies these days that companies should try and keep in mind as they're maybe ramping up their PMOs?
Well, there's a couple of key things we've learned from looking at countless numbers of these organizations and working with them every day. One is that these have to remain lean and mean organizations. So when we talk about PMOs, we're really not talking about the center of excellence where you might park all your project managers, but we're talking about the place that's supposed to enable and evolve the processes and the procedures and the engagement. And as wonderful an impact as we know PMOs can have, we know that by definition they're overhead functions. I always tell my clients, if they doubt that, go ask their finance partners what they think of them. So lean and mean is always going to be the case. And I don't know if I have a single client who has ever said, I have enough people to do my charter. So it's not a place to be if you want to build a kingdom. The second key strategy is this is about small steps and quick wins. You don't forklift organizations through maturity levels of this stuff. There's a lot of change management. Dig a little further, it's all about politics. You know, you can have the best methodologies, the best procedures, tools, templates. You know, we can give you all of those, and you still won't succeed unless you deal with the change management issues and, in fact, the cultural issues that help you tune what your PMO is out there to do.
When you say that, you're not really talking about the center of excellence, the huge behemoth that companies may have, and you're focusing more of the lean and mean. Does that mean you're more advocating multiple decentralized PMOs in organizations, or more of a centralized PMO, or does it not really matter as long as you're staying lean and mean?
Well, I didn't mean that there wasn't a center of excellence. That often those become a different organization than the PMO that has, this charter of evolving the organization. So the center of excellence, where you pool your project managers, can exist at multiple levels, as well as a more process-driven PMO. The key is knowing when to fight that battle. And what we have a scenario that we call the mainstreaming of project management. That, at the end of the day, everyone who's beyond junior level, and especially anybody in management, needs to be somewhat competent at the basics of project management. So we need to stop building specialized walls around everybody who ever runs a project. But when you have a core group of the people that do the big and tough things, say enterprise-level projects, or large change management projects, then there's often an associated resource pool. But I don't really get, there's going to be project managers everywhere, no matter what you do with the process and tools and reporting side. So I'm very sensitive about advising people to centralize project managers, because that often the resistance is so high. People aren't one-dimensional. So somebody that happens to be a good project manager may also have a specialized set of technical skills, and they reside in the technical team. Well, it's like Solomon and the baby. Which mother's going to get half a baby?
Yes.
How you want to optimize that person can't just reside on what org box you put them in.
Okay, understood. Well, let's move from the PMO in general more a bit to the specific portfolio management and governance aspects here. And what general recommendations would you have in regards to PPM and governance for companies that already have an existing governance process in place today? What's coming for them?
Well, one of the most interesting things that we run into all of the time is that people have all the moving parts of governance. They will have a standard process. They will have governance councils, boards, groups set up, and they will have meetings. But when you really dig into it, often those people showing up for those meetings don't know exactly what they're being charged to do. So we get all the moving parts right, but the decisions don't often stick. And it's a complicated issue. I don't mean to make light of it,
yes.
But I always say, when I look at a governance group, does it have a clear charter? Do the people there know specifically what they are there to do? And if you explain to them how they're supposed to be there, the particular link to portfolio management, particularly for projects and new investments, is the group of people are there to make a group-level decision, not to fight for their own top 10 list.
That's one thing that I also wanted to ask you here is, you say you often find that the charter is missing. I suppose you also find, rhetorical question probably, lots of personal pet projects that are pushed, politics that play into this as well, right?
Oh, absolutely. And when I say charter, I don't mean a big formal exercise. I like things very simple and practical. But on one piece of paper, what are we doing? Another misconception is that you can't avoid the politics. You kind of have to address them. But you have to decide what level you address them at. And often there's gamesmanship or horse trading, or we worry about what happens in the back room. But if it doesn't have a material effect on the value of the process, we have a strategy called turn a blind eye, which sometimes is appropriate. We can't worry about everything, and we want to make things. My goal for a governance portfolio management process is it's transparent and the results are defendable. I didn't say accurate or perfect or right, but it's transparent and defendable. So people have to engage in it.
If I put myself into the shoes of our listeners right now, especially those listeners who do not have PPM and governance in place, you have just painted an almost insurmountable mountain here that's difficult to get across. What would you recommend that somebody does, the first few steps that they should take if they have no PPM, no governance at this time, and they want to move into that direction, that they can, avoid these issues that you're seeing? Obviously, begin with the charter, right?
And that's why I said small steps and quick wins. Because it does look insurmountable. I look at everything, everything in the line. You create something, you have to be able to tell people what the purpose is. So, chartering a group or chartering a PMO are important steps. But the simplest way to look at it, where I tell all my research clients to start, is number one, you can always start with an angle of transparency, which is if you are in a position as a PPM leader, and whether you have a formal PMO or not, but if you are someone with a PPM type responsibility, you are expected to be the hub of information. And you can gather the information and show it to people. And it sounds simple, but it's of huge value to organizations that have never had that view before. It will lead them to new business insights. And you can start putting all the formalism later. But the first step, transparency, reporting, show the executives an aggregated view of their business they haven't seen before. Great quick win. The other way, the other first step I ask people to take is, find the problem. Find a distinct problem that's setting your executive's hair on fire, and scope an initiative that helps solve it. Well, we chase so many things that are nobody cares about.
Yes.
So find the one people do.
Exactly. Find the one thing that people do care about, then use that as a starting point and a stepping stone. Fully understood. Yeah. Final question for you, Audrey. Gartner has a lot of information, a lot of research that's available out there. You also have PMO and PPM services, if I understood correctly. Give us the 1 minute overview here. What is it that Gartner can do for the organizations of our listeners here in regard to PMO, PPM, and governance? We
cover it in a lot of ways. Our sort of flagship offering is a PPM under our Gartner for IT Leaders research. Mm-hmm. And in fact, that is targeted to do some of the things I talked about. If you are in an organization and you are responsible for, quote unquote, helping your organization get better at any of the P's, project management, program management, portfolio management, then that's where our research is targeted. So we work very hard not to reinvent the wheel, but if you've got the wheel, we'll help you figure out how to get it rolling. So we are complementary to pretty much any methodology out there, but we do look between the cracks. And we do that by providing all sorts of research, from case studies to tools where we will give you the starting template, to a methodology to help you score projects, to basic guidance on the technologies and software that can be involved to help automate these things. And I do it in a pretty compact way. So Gartner research documents, if you haven't seen them, are short and actionable. And all of our client interactions, again, are pretty short and actionable. So we're there to just, get you where you're going a little faster and a little easier. Whether it's a tool, whether it's a methodology, whether it's a product review, a case study, anything of that nature.
Great. Audrey, thank you so much for coming on the program and talking to us a bit about Gartner and PPM and governance. Appreciate it.
Thank you, and thank you for joining us in Orlando.
And that was our interview with Audrey Apfel on Gartner's PPM and IT Governance Summit and some of the findings that were presented. And that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. And at this point, let me remind you of that one small favor I had for you at the beginning. Please go ahead and tell just one person today about the Project Management Podcast and how much you enjoy it. As always, you can find us on the web at thepmpodcast.com. If you are a project manager who wants to become a PMP, then the easiest way to do so is with our sister podcast, the Project Management Prepcast, and study for the exam by watching over 38 hours of video training from pmprepcast.com. And if you are already a PMP, well then, stop by at PM Lectures. Here we go beyond just delivering PDUs. We give you training from the brightest minds in project management today. Please send your emails to pmpodcast@gmail.com, and when you write, please try to tell me where in the world you are writing from. And finally, we have this. A project is complete when it starts working for you, rather than you working for it. Until next time.